Hey, everybody. Welcome to Creators in Coffee. I am Erica, founder and CEO of Autofluencer. And joining me today, I am super excited, is Taylor Haney. You might also know her as Clutch Chick Media. She is well known in the drifting world for professional photography at drift races. And Taylor, you are our first photographer that we've had on Creators in Coffee. So welcome. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited. This is my first
Yeah.
time doing a podcast, so
Oh, good. Oh,
yeah.
good. Well, I will say if you don't already follow Taylor on the gram, definitely follow her. What really attracted me to Taylor made me reach out and be like, okay, first of all, we want you on the platform. Second of all, would love to interview you is because you do actually spend a lot of time doing education around race photography, which is cool. So we will have a separate episode about racing photography and how to get into that if you are someone curious about it. But in this episode, we really want to talk about from the photographer's standpoint. When we think of creators, a lot of people tend to think a creator is solely someone with a big following in the social media side. And while you do have a social media following, you are a creator of the visual art, right? Capturing those visual images from races, a big part of creation is that. And, would love your perspective as someone who not only is a photographer, but also has a background and your day job is in marketing.
Yes.
So you know the space, you know the importance of imagery. Tell us a little bit about, what you think is important about having professional photography, especially in a race environment.
Racing in general is marketing, right? There's a lot of logos and especially on the television, they have the ads running and things like that. So there's a lot of things going on and there's a lot of opportunity for companies to plug in into that space and show their brand in a new light, possibly. Reach a new audience, especially in drifting. It's usually the under 40 crowd, so it's kind of like the
Hmm.
young and hip. And if you're really wanting to get into that space and be seen as an exciting, fresh brand, you might want to tap into kind of a younger motorsport, like intense action sport, like drifting or VMX or rally racing, whatever it may be. I'm just a little biased on drifting, just a little bit. But ultimately, being involved in that space is telling your story and helping your brand resonate with the audience you're trying to reach.
And I think there's this thought, right? And thinking of drifting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Both maybe from the driver and from the brand. So the brands do sponsorships. And in today's day and age, everybody's gotten hip to, even if it doesn't get a ton of TV coverage or even big streaming coverage, it's social media coverage, right?
Yes.
Like all of the racers are, well, the racers that are really trying to move those sponsorships, right, and those partnerships, they're posting, they're trying to post a
Mm-hmm.
lot. But I think there's this misnomer, especially maybe for racers that are newer, where budgets are tighter,
Yes.
brands be trying to pay with just products only. Hey, I could have someone on my pit crew take pictures,
Yep.
right? Like, hey, will you run out? I got a friend coming to see the race. Will you run out and take some pictures? I'll get you a press pass. Like,
Mm-hmm.
come in. What is that kind of tipping point where they're like, I probably need some professional help.
Yeah, I think it really falls on the sponsors and what they want. I feel like a good sponsor packet or like a driver support program kind of builds that social media aspect into it because you can measure that, right? So you're making
Right.
this investment but you're also setting expectations for what you're giving these drivers because I mean you're not giving them money but you're still giving them thousands of dollars worth of free product, right? It's not nothing. You want
Hopefully you start giving them money for the good
to, yeah,
ones.
they
Just saying.
they would prefer that, I'm sure. It's one of those things where this is their dream. A lot of them are coming up in racing and their families helping them, things like that. Friends are working for free to show up to these events and help them move forward. So to be able to support not just themselves and their whole team, their whole program. So photography and media is a big part of that. So not just
Yeah.
photography, but video as well. So like we're saying with social media, everything is about reels. It's about TikToks. So something that from my experience is that I've had to push myself beyond photography and start doing video.
Right.
I mean, just this last weekend, I was out there with my little lapel mics and my cell phone recording my driver talking about all the sponsors on his car and doing little snippets. So they're demanding that because of the social media landscape.
Would you say that For a driver that maybe wants to get noticed or seen by more brands or get a paid sponsorship, because there are paid sponsorships. I want to make that really clear. There are a lot less than I think, especially drivers that are doing a lot of really great media and photography. Some of your drivers that you work with, I mean, they crush it for their partners. And we'll talk about ROI and measuring that here in a second. Do you think for a driver that maybe doesn't have some of those paid sponsorships, is still trying to capture all their video and media on their own or with their pit crew or with someone from the team, what are the benefits for them from switching from kind of an afterthought to professional? Like, have you seen that change with some of your drivers of now that they have more professional, it's one less thing they need to worry about, that it's been easier for them and it's helped them from the sponsorship angle?
Oh, absolutely. It's because like having a dedicated media person, I mean, it's more expensive on their part, but as far as it's really about open communication with the driver and the sponsor and really setting clear goals that you both benefit from, because you can record all the videos and do all the things and it's like they can't use it. So it's understanding what the brand needs. Do they want, being clear, like, oh, we need 4 reels to post on our
Mm,
Instagram from the event. Can you record, like, even just setting like a finite, like, hey, we need this many as part of this deal is really
yeah,
helpful because it sets the expectation not just for the driver but for their media that they're working with. Because a lot of times
yeah.
it's with my drivers, it's like, oh, I gotta post content. I don't know what I have to do, but I'm just gonna post and just hope the sponsors love it. If it can feed into your goals and your goals for social media marketing and just marketing in general, like if you say you want big posters that you want to be able to sell and that's part of your package and your deal with your driver, you want to communicate that we need high resolution, your car in action
Right.
with our logo really prominent. Those are really
Right.
important to be able to communicate with the media partnership.
That's such a great point. So when you work with a driver, do you kind of push them to say, hey, let's go through your big sponsorships and what are those deliverables? So I, as Taylor, make sure I capture them all that. Like, do you keep like a spreadsheet, a checklist, like to make sure you do capture that because, it goes by quick.
I feel like that the partners that I've seen my drivers work with, and of course I work with a lot of pro specs, so they're just coming into their like higher level competition. They're not quite pro yet, so they're learning their way. And I feel like a lot of the partners they work with maybe are investing minimally
Yeah.
to start with and seeing kind of what they do, but they're not really setting expectations. So far, at least for me, I'm kind of flying blind, but looking at the other drivers who are producing content and what their expectations are has been really
Mm,
helpful
yeah.
because I see what they're posting. I'm like, let's try that. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And drivers too, being savvy and like looking around and seeing like what kind of content are the other really successful, high paid, high sponsored drivers posting and how often are they posting? And just the quality of the media. What kind of media do I need to have with me on the team that can produce content like that?
That's great. Those are great tips. So brands take note, right? And I do think that even if you're testing someone out, giving, like you were saying, some communication, some suggestions, some guidelines, right? So that the partnership is fruitful early on, because I think the quicker that you can get the types of assets that are helpful for the brand and the driver is producing those assets in partnership, ideally with professional support, the better you see ROI, the quicker you see ROI on it. And then you can
Mm-hmm.
make those decisions to make a bigger investment. I've certainly seen some of those things you reference as well, right? Kind of like, oh, just a little, like, and
Yeah.
we could certainly see a little more guidance and hopefully through, create things like Creators and Coffee and other education in the industry, both sides will start to learn more of what things produce. And so you mentioned a little bit, we touched on this quickly around ROI,
Mm-hmm.
right? And being able to measure an ROI. And, from your standpoint as the person creating a lot of that content, how do you measure success of, did this content hit? What are you looking at? What are you doing to see, is this working? Should we tweak it for the next race?
Like racing as a whole is exciting, right? So as far as investing, like why should I invest into a driver or some sort of racer or motorsports in general? People like to see exciting stuff, engaging content like the videos
Hmm.
and the tire smoke and all of that. It's exciting, it's fun to watch, even if it's short clips, but it's just pushing your social media page's reach up higher in the algorithm because people are engaging with it, it's exciting for them. And along the way, they're engaging with your brand. They might look and see what else is going on in your page and, what kind of products do they have for my vehicle. So you're organically fostering that consumer loyalty without much work because they're
Yeah.
looking at you and seeing your brand out in the space, this like young, exciting, action packed space, and you're seeing more people engage, especially some of these like older motorsports companies that they've been around for a really long time and they're trying to like engage the new crowd. The guys that are used to fix up old 50s Mustangs and stuff are kind of not doing that anymore. So they're like, we got to keep this going. We need to engage a younger audience that's into
Yeah.
these 90s Japanese
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and the millennial and Gen Z are going, are the highest disposable income generations like ever, so that's the under 40 crowd. You've got some of the biggest incomes to ever, or like kind of combined buying power, because these generations are so large, is huge. And I think to your point, Taylor, brands can't afford to miss out. And with things like drifting or the rise, I think we've seen a big rise in independent motorsports,
mhm.
gaining new traction, at least in new drivers. Like they haven't seemed to, with the rally racing and nitrocross and autocross, these all these new options, or kind of a resurgence of options that maybe have already been there. They're just getting, new legs, or from grid life to all these other options. You've got the drivers, they're pulling in through their social, the audiences, these buyers, these consumers, like you said, it's a whole new generation. If I'm a brand, I think, oh, well, my drivers got it handled. I'll just rely on my driver. What are your thoughts on brands sending out their own professional photography teams to capture across all the drivers that they're sponsoring?
Yeah, that's a good question because you're trusting the driver to pick the right media to achieve those goals that you're going for, whatever it is, whether it's more social media engagement or whatever the case may be, more lead generation, things like that. One thing I would say, just to maximize your investment in the media, just make sure you're including that in your driver sponsorship packages. Like make it part of your deal in writing. Say, this is what I need from you. And then usually a driver will be like, okay, who do I know that can do that, that can achieve the job so that I can keep this relationship with my sponsor? And then as far as evaluating performance, that you would just look at your engagement metrics and direct consumer feedback and really understand the true ROI of your media spend.
When it comes to, if I'm a driver or even a brand, what are your tips on how to select the right photographer? What is that process? What is your advice there? What have you seen?
As far as hiring a media, either whether it's video, photography,
Right. Yeah.
it really depends on your goals. If you're looking for someone who can edit on the fly, you're really wanting that at event play by play coverage. You want someone who's fast but good. They're churning out really efficient content. They're either at the event sending it to you as things happen, or they're doing it within 24 hours. Speed's kind of the name of the game. This stuff isn't easy. You're
Right.
outside in the elements. Like this past weekend, it was 93 degrees in New Jersey, and it was tough to
Mm.
be a media person. Trust me. You have to manage your time well, understanding that your drivers have expectations of you and their sponsors have expectations. Hopefully, you're the other missing piece. And you have
Yeah.
to make quality content for them, whatever that is. But if they're not so in a rush, like they're just really looking for like a few really high quality images they want on flyers or posters or like
Mm.
other collateral, they may not be so worried about somebody who's fast, but they want somebody who can make quality work. So there's kind of like,
Yeah.
I guess, two sides of a photographer then, because
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of photographers that I feel are excellent. They deliver
Hmm.
high quality stuff, but they take longer. They're
Right.
not as like quick on the hip, whereas others are, you know, editing in their driver's trailer as soon as they're done driving. And they're
Right.
like, within the next couple hours, I'll have all your pictures to you. That's fast,
Yeah.
and so it just depends on your needs and what you're looking for in your brand.
That's awesome. Well, Taylor, thank you so much. Those are such great tips for both brands. And again, I mean, if I think about what all the things we just covered, really summing some of it up, it's definitely relying on professional media, right, for the drivers, the brands is so essential because it does have a greater impact, right? It heightens, that investment. It makes it exponential, that investment that the brand's making, in that driver as far as that sponsorship and that partnership. Also relies on really good communication, not only between the brand and the driver as far as what they want from a
Mhm.
deliverables standpoint, right? Like to the brand, it's okay to suggest some things, right?
Yeah,
And to ask for those even in newer, smaller partnerships. And that enables you to kind of compare and contrast more of an apples to apples, but inversely, then it's imperative that the driver and the media person also communicate, right? Really strongly, which sounds like you're really great at doing. And then just ensuring when you're trying to pick the right media person, what are those goals and what are those expectations? And being really clear on those probably upfront before you bring someone, because you might have someone where you've seen their work and you're like, that's amazing. And you have them come and you don't realize, oh, shoot, I'm not going to get that for like another week. Right. And
right,
you were thinking they were going to be posting those, you know, highly edited videos with all the transition, everything like that day. Right. And
right.
only to find out like, oh, no, I didn't get that to that driver for another week.
Communication
Yeah.
is definitely key.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure. Okay, well, Taylor, thank you so much. And we're going to have you back on to talk about how do you become a professional race media person. So everybody stay tuned for a future episode with Taylor.
Thank you.